Welcome back, everyone, to the latest edition of the Unclassified podcast. It is Valentine's Day, so it is the biggest day of the year for our teen heartthrob, Preston Stewart.
Yeah.
And, of course, it's just another day in the nation for America's Mayor, Ben Wheeler, which is me. And today we're going to talk about the Munich Security Conference. We're going to talk about updates about Iran. Preston says he has funny things coming out of Russia, so we'll find out if they are actually funny. And I sound like a little bit of a hater there. And then we're also going to talk about the new surveillance state. Actually, it's not new. It's always existed. It's just a matter of now it's being used more widely. And but Preston, last week we recorded on Saturdays. We do every week. And so Sunday we didn't get to talk about the halftime show. Were you a fan? What did you think? Did you watch the Kid Rock halftime show? Did you watch Hillbilly Vanilli?
I didn't really watch. So I don't really watch the halftime show at all. It's been a long time since I don't know that I've ever really cared about the halftime show. I was excited for the game. We had it on, but the halftime is when I make moves, right? Like that's when I get more food, clean up a little bit, do some work, get ready for whatever it might be is when the halftime show is going. So it was on. I don't know that. I mean, I know this is going to come as a big shock to everyone. Like I'm not super tied into pop culture. So I actually didn't know who Bad Bunny was until people started trying to cancel like the number one artist in the world, which is it's tough. It's hard to do that. But no, I mean, it's it's ridiculous, man. Like picking it seems like that group Turning Point picked a fight that they were not going to like. What are they doing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Like everything seems like it was the right move for the NFL. I saw somebody trying to do a deep dive of the secrets behind how Bad Bunny was invited to do the Super Bowl show. It's like, he's the number one artist in the world. Like case solved, like cracked it wide open for you there, guys. Like I heard a good analysis recently that I think hit this nail on the head. Or like you're trying to pull as many people as you can into the Super Bowl. So you've already got the football fans, like they're watching it. And it doesn't really matter what the halftime show is, they're going to be watching it. So the halftime show is an opportunity to pull in other people that may or may not be interested or ideally are not interested in the game. And maybe some of them stick around and watch a little football. Or worst case, you can sling a couple ads in there before and after the show is over. So I don't know, from a business perspective, it seems like one of the most logical moves, but of course everything's political now.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. I think what is most interesting is that never would have happened if Charlie Kirk was still alive. Don't really like Charlie, never did, but he knew that you don't really pick fights you're going to lose, and so that was perhaps the most stunning example of his absence, right? Was that they went out there and they did this thing they were going to lose about no matter what. I'll also say, I didn't know what he's saying, obviously, but I've added like 3 of the songs from the halftime show to my Spotify playlists. They're kind of vibes, and that's kind of when I realized all this talk about, well, I don't know what he's saying. It just seems like whether or not you like music is usually just based on whether or not you like the tune rather than what's being said, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we generally can't understand most of the words in music. Just to be like, people are constantly quoting like the wrong words from songs and just making sounds where words are supposed to be. So, this one was 100% in a different language, but most big hits in the US recently are not exactly like perfect English, to say the least. It's
also like, spare me the tears. Like, remember Despacito? Like that was everywhere an entire summer. Remember Gangnam Style? That was everywhere as well. So like, this is nothing we're not used to. Also, Americans, whether or not they speak Spanish, are actually quite familiar with it. I believe the most popular food food type in the United States is Mexican food. So, or Tex-Mex or something of this variety. So, spare me the tears. It's just like people just want to be mad for the sake of being mad. I almost feel like maybe this is like a nuclear level take, but I almost feel like if you were like against this and you watch the Kid Rock halftime show, you like supported separate drinking fountains or something, because just like get over it, dude. Who cares? What do you think?
Did you see, you were talking about Mexican food being so popular? Did you see the guy? I don't know his name, but he's up for an undersecretary position, and they were drilling him during questioning because he's had some like pretty significant white supremacist public takes. And they were asking him about like this white genocide he keeps talking about. And one of the things he cited was white food. And people are like, what is this dude talking about?
Oh my God.
What is that?
White food.
Anyways,
if it's anything that comes
said
from the island of Britain,
there's a decrease in white food. It's like, I don't know. What are we
going
with on that one?
Dorks, dude. They're like just the biggest dorks in the world. I often think that the white supremacists, even in an all-white society, would still be the biggest losers on the planet, right? So, but another thing happened, and this is our first topic of the day. During the Super Bowl, there was a Ring doorbell commercial that sparked a lot of outrage, and that it showed what they called search party. And so they had teamed up with Flock to use AI that if you are missing a dog, your dog gets lost, then it can scour all the Ring doorbells in your neighborhood or your city to help you identify where the dog is. And this set off a lot of alarms because Ring doorbells are everywhere, right? And the use of AI on them to find something startled a lot of people, because obviously it's not just a dog. It's basically just a switch or a change in coding, and all of a sudden now it's finding people, right? I've seen examples of someone saying, an abused spouse running away from home, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are all cause for complaints, and the outrage was so strong that it sparked Ring to cut its partnership with Flock, which I thought was good. Yeah. But it brings us into this new era of the surveillance state that we're in, which was set up after 9/11. And of course, you remember the biggest iteration, the biggest leak was Prism, right? Where they were collecting all the data on all internet users and all their phone records. And that was ruled illegal, and they had to discontinue the program. But with these Flock cameras, it has caused a bit of controversy. So when you're out driving, most people who listen to this in the United States have to drive to go somewhere unless you live in New York City. But when you're out driving, if you look out on the sides of the road, you'll see these poles with solar panels attached to them. And then right below the solar panel is the camera. These are the Flock cameras, and they take pictures of license plates. Now, this inherently is not illegal, because the government's position, and perhaps they are right, courts have upheld this, that you have no expectation of privacy in a public space. I think that is true. Now, this is where it gets tricky, because Flock, in some jurisdictions, in some municipalities, have introduced searchable. They've made this database of license plates searchable. So now the government types in your license plate, types in your vehicle type, and they can pull up every single place you've been in that area. And in some areas, in real time. And so I think that's extremely illegal. We're seeing some courts crack down on it in Virginia, but it seems to me like, how is that not just putting a tracker on every single car? And I spoke to a state official who works in the criminal justice system, and they said, well, it's not illegal. You give up those rights and everything. And I would actually argue separate. I think you're collecting a mass of data on me, and then all you have to do is type in my license plate, and then you can pull up every place I've ever been ever without a warrant, because keep in mind, because Flock's a private company, they get around the Fourth Amendment, because the Fourth Amendment restricts what the government can do, not what private companies can do. And so the government can then just purchase it, right? So this is a whole thing. I think it's a false premise that you give up the right to privacy when you go out in public, because, there is no such thing as a private road. When's the last time you took a private road to go to Target, Preston?
We haven't built that one yet. Yeah.
You also don't have an option to not pay taxes, right? You're in this society, and therefore your rights have to be respected. Anyways, so that takes us to, because we have a few things we have to hit here. So the ATF not yesterday, but it was revealed yesterday that they have created a backdoor gun registry, a federal gun registry. Did you read that article by chance?
I saw that you sent it. I did not read it. So I'm glad we got airing out that dirty laundry here.
Yes.
So, I was busy. I had things. No. I was doing things.
I wasn't upset. I was just judging how much I should recap. I wasn't dissing you. So basically, the ATF took all these records from gun companies that went out of business, and they then digitalized all the records. it is against federal law to create a gun registry. Now, the ATF, this program started in 2024, and the Trump administration continued it through 2025. And they've digitalized all these records. Now, the ATF claims, because now they're in hot water of Congress, that the database that they have created is not searchable. But they do say it can be made searchable, which the ATF's argument is that by digitalizing the records, they have not created a database of gun owners federally, but rather it is only when they add the search button or they use AI to analyze it that it does become a database. Interesting. So we'll have to see what happens there with Congress. But to me, it does seem like once a search button is added, it does become illegal, right? So
I don't know. What's the purpose of all of that if you can't search it? Maybe I'm a little confused. Like, you're preserving records that can't be... It seems like the argument would be we need to be able to preserve the records, but if you can't look through the records, then why preserve them? So, like, of course there's going to be a search feature added, right?
There has to be, yeah. And so they're creating a backdoor gun registry. I don't see how it's not a violation of the law. I think it's also another hit on what was supposed to be a pro-gun administration. I mean, obviously, you know, they stand for nothing. Trump's a New Yorker, so is Kash Patel. They don't care about guns. They've never been around guns. So they have created a registry, and as soon as that search button is added, they can, in principle, find any gun owner and what they own. I guess if you have it from a company that's gone out of business, which, to my understanding, quite a lot of people. Gun companies often, you know, come and go. Now, the next one on our list, remember the Wyden siren? So for those of you who don't know, Senator Ron Wyden released a letter, was it last week, Preston? Yeah. Or last week, where he said, he wrote to the CIA director, and he said, I have written you a letter about my concerns about the agency's activities. Now, that is a letter about a letter. And at first glance, you go, okay, who cares? But it is called the Wyden siren because when Ron Wyden writes this, when he sends these letters out, it is almost over 20 years, every single time, it is an alert to the public that there is domestic spying and civil liberties harm going on. He did it with PRISM. He did it when the CIA had their illegal collection program. He did it when they were... what were they doing? They were pulling the business data of companies in order to get information on customers without notifying either party. So he has routinely done this. But the assumption here is that the CIA is now operating domestically. If you take the Wyden siren to be what it is, right? Which is every time he does this, he's never been hyperbolic. He's always been spot on every time. That it appears the CIA at some level is doing something domestically. Do you have any thoughts, or can I keep going? It's up to you.
I mean, there's a lot. I wish the government was always a good, like 100% of the time historically and now and into the future is a perfectly good and rational actor, because things like having these cameras everywhere could do a lot of good if they could only be used for good. But the reason these laws exist is because they're constantly abused and taken advantage of. I just think of how many like missing person cases could be handled quicker. How many criminals could be apprehended faster? All that stuff. If genuinely a good acting government could just push a button and bam, you've got every time this person's license plate showed up across state lines and every time their face was identified on every camera that's not even supposed to be public. Like, there's a lot of good that could come from that. But of course, we can't do that because we just have a track record. Every government has a track record of somebody who's in a little bit of power and abuses that. So, in my ideal world, that would actually be really helpful technology. The CIA thing will be interesting to see. The timing is interesting because we just had the DNI down in Georgia looking through voter rolls, which doesn't really, that's a weird thing in a lot of ways, just like outside the purview of what you would expect the DNI to be doing, the Director of National Intelligence, which, generally outward focused, the majority of intelligence agencies. I want to say the FBI is kind of included is that right? Are they included in the DNI for not in terms of command and control or budget authority, but for coordination? I think they are. DNI is a weird place, right? Like they don't own any of these things. They're just like a coordination of all of them. But either way, we'll see. It unfortunately wouldn't be shocking at any point to hear that the CIA is doing more and more domestically.
Absolutely. And so, on that note, though, the DHS has been trying to identify anti-ICE social media accounts, and they have sent hundreds of subpoenas, we have now found out, to tech companies demanding they reveal the names, real names, email addresses, phone numbers, and credit card of anti-ICE users online. These are people who are using free speech. They have not crossed the line into, breaking free speech or into an imminent threat. Now, additionally,
hold on. I haven't heard anything about that. Is that confirmed? DHS is
in the New York Times. Yeah.
Okay.
And so they have done that. Now we know that they have not crossed over into breaking any speech laws because DHS is using administrative subpoenas and administrative warrants to the tech companies. Now, what that means is the executive branch is giving itself the authority, is giving itself a warrant, it is giving itself a subpoena. And how that usually works is that you have to go to the judicial branch, and then a judge signs off on it. It's a checks and balance in order to protect you, right? Now, in addition to that, what we also know, because Tom Homan said it, was that DHS is also creating a database of those who protest them. So it seems like they're creating a database of anybody who opposes them online and offline. And then on top of that, as Ken Klippenstein reported yesterday, DHS has secretly authorized a surveillance program on Americans. It allows Homeland Security officers to assume false identities and interact with users, friending them, joining closed groups, and gaining access to otherwise private postings, photographs, and friend lists, and more. They've already used this on pro-Palestine groups, and that is when they essentially go undercover without a warrant, but go into these groups and begin to fish to find out what's going on. So it definitely is starting to feel, it's starting to feel a little Chinese around here. I'm not gonna lie. It's getting grim. And I would also say this, because I've raised these concerns a bit this past week to different people, and they've said, well, if you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to worry about, if you're not engaging in terrorism. But I think it's become abundantly clear that this administration is using, because they get their stuff tossed out all the time, right? Whether it is in court, as we see with the ICE, every single one of these ICE altercations, they're getting tossed out almost immediately. Grand juries are rejecting them. The system is, to an extent, working. But what is not being accounted for in this rebuttal to any concerns about domestic surveillance is that the government is using the legal process as the punishment. They know they're not going to get a conviction, but they're using the process. They're using the process of showing up at your house at 6 a.m. and kicking in your door, and then dragging you through the court system, dragging your name through the mud. They're using that entire thing as the punishment, because that just bankrupts your life. It destroys your life, right? It is a vindictive administration. It's a vindictive government, and that's the whole point, is to intimidate you into silence. They know they're not going to get convictions here. They know they're breaking the law the same way they broke the law when it came to the radical groups of the 70s and 80s. It is a matter of trying to prove a point and ruining lives and using that legal process as the punishment.
I've seen the argument from some folks in this regard of like a martial law almost.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were under such threat and we're at such danger of losing the country that these things need to be sacrificed and you need to deal with it. I disagree. I don't think that, I think there's plenty of things that we can improve and that we're doing, that we messed up in this country over years. I don't know that warrants doing away with constitutional norms. Yeah, I don't like it. And anytime it's the argument of, if you haven't done anything wrong, don't worry about it, is empty. That is an empty argument. That's not how this works. And again, that goes back to the ideal world where the government is trustworthy and every actor within the government is trustworthy and full of integrity. And that's just not the case. I mean, we've seen boil it all the way down to, let's say you have 100% unlimited faith in the government institutions and that you will be found not guilty when all this moves forward. Do you know the challenge that would erupt when you have one bad actor, say a police officer or a federal agent gets confused and they say something they shouldn't say, and then rather than back down, they double down to protect their reputation or protect their job. Like, get out of here. That kind of stuff happens around the country, around the world every single day, where somebody's pride gets in the way of them correcting a mistake. And now you're looking at 3, 6, 9, 12 months of going through this legal process, to your point. For what? Like, no, it doesn't matter that you have, just don't break the law and you'll be fine. Like, there needs to be some restrictions on the other side of that as well. I hate to see those starting to get whittled away.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, it's, they have taken the surveillance system, the surveillance state that we've created, and they are now functionally abusing it. And to the ACLU's credit, to Ron Paul's credit, you don't hear that coming out of my mouth a lot, and to his, Ron Paul and his son, Rand Paul, the system we have set up is totally now being abused on U.S. citizens. And so they're going to have to do something about it. And I know, the Democrats in the Senate are going to say we need to regulate it. But I think the answer is you've got to get rid of it, right? Because I don't really know how you fix this. And then people on the right will say, well, this happened to us, last administration. Right. Well, then there should be unanimous support to dismantle this.
Yeah. I get frustrated because this is presented as like the right does it now, so the left will, like, what if the left does it back to you? And then the right will say, well, they did do, like, it's not a right left thing. It's a too much government power thing. And I mean, give me an example. Maybe they're out there and the audience will correct me, I'm sure. But like, I feel like there's very few instances where the government has given itself more power and a future administration in either direction has said, you know what? That was too much. We don't want that authority. We'd like to give that back to Congress or the courts or the people. So we just keep piling on in the wrong direction. And yeah, I mean, a short-term argument could be right versus left. Like, does one side want this happening to them next go around? But this is just a theme. I mean, I think there's a lot of positives that came out of kind of national security reform following 9/11. But there's also plenty in the Patriot Act that was, arguably overreaching. And a lot of that stuff hasn't gone away. We just kind of expand upon it through successive administrations. So yeah, dial it all back, man. Dial it all back.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, would you like to go to Germany or would you like to go to Iran or Russia?
I want to tell you the Russia story real quick. And then I'm interested in, I've not been following the Munich Security Conference very closely. So I am interested in getting kind of some updates there. But this is great. So Russia has been so incompetent the last 2 weeks, really, week and a half even, that it would not be surprising if there are soldiers in their military wondering if Putin is compromised. Like, they just keep shooting themselves in the foot unnecessarily. So the Russian military has been overly reliant on Starlink, not a system like Starlink. And I'm not saying Starlink for like all satellite internet, like you say, Kleenex for all tissues, the actual Starlink product from SpaceX, which is not supposed to be in Russia, not supposed to be operational in Russia, but they have found ways around it. And it is so effective and it is so simple to set up and so secure that the Russian military has become very, very heavily dependent on this system. It's an issue because, it's a U.S. product. It's a U.S. product.
They're not really supposed to have
and
it. Yeah.
They're not even supposed to have it. About a week and a half ago, Musk shut it off. They found a way to essentially add all of the Russian terminals to a blacklist and all of the Ukrainian terminals to a whitelist. And every terminal that was not on the Ukrainian whitelist in this one region lost access. Just like overnight. Like, Russian soldiers woke up and no more internet connection. Now, there are other ways for Russia to communicate in the war zone. But Starlink, again, is so reliable, so effective, and so easy to set up that I don't know a percentage, but a very high percentage of the Russian military was operating on Starlink. And they woke up one day and it wasn't working, which Russians are freaking out because they're like, how have we not been developing an alternative? And, they have some options. They've got Wi-Fi bridges they're starting to put up, erecting satellite positions over. I mean, one of the benefits of Starlink is it's a relatively small satellite sitting out on the ground. Now they're erecting these kind of tall satellite towers outside command posts, and Ukraine is just hammering those things every time they go up. So lost internet connectivity, which has a big impact on the reporting up and down the chain of command. All of a sudden, orders can't go down, supply requests can't go up, all sorts of stuff like that. So as Russia is still trying to figure out, like, what exactly do we do here? Because I think a good comparison to losing Starlink, Ben, would be if cell phones just like did not exist anymore, starting right now.
Oh,
all right. So like you could still talk, you could still get to work, you could still do your work at work. Maybe you'd have to send all of your emails from a computer. Maybe you'd have to get a landline installed in your house. Like, communications would not end, but the next few days would be pretty rough. And everybody doesn't have their own personal number. You've got to call their house or got to call their business. Anyways, go ahead. I've got more here, but fire away.
That's crazy. That is like a total breakdown of communication.
It's serious. Yeah. So the best part here is Russia was freaking out. They're trying to figure out, like, how do we work through this? Understandably so. So Ukraine saw an opportunity. One of their cyber warfare divisions spun up a bunch of fake pages and said, oh, we're Russian. For a fee, we can get your terminal back online. And they had a lot. I want to say over it's either 2,000 or 4,000 requests from across the front line of Russian soldiers saying, yes, what do you need? And they said, oh, the serial number for your device and the exact location you're trying to operate it, and some money to get this taken care of. And they pulled in over $6,000 in the span of a couple of days, sent that directly to the armed forces of Ukraine to buy new supplies. The location for all the Starlink terminals gave Ukraine thousands of location of Russian command posts all across the front. And the serial number then they just handed over to SpaceX and said, we found some to add to the blacklist. And every one of those terminals is now permanently disabled.
Dude. That's crazy.
It doesn't stop there. So Russia has also been using Telegram, the messaging app. They have access to some others, some they don't. They stopped using WhatsApp a while ago because it's compromised by the West, and the U.S. can read your messages, is what they were telling their soldiers. So they shifted over to Telegram. And, I mean, Russia has their own apps domestically, but nobody wants to use it because they're like, well, the state's just going to read everything. So, like, they're not stupid, and they don't want to put out everything on a state-run service. So they use the Telegram app. Now, a lot of times this was connected through Starlink, but it doesn't have to be. When there's cell signal, they would use that to coordinate activities, talk with units left and right, and coordinate things as well. So Starlink down. This week, they started throttling Telegram because they said there's terrorist activities being coordinated on this Telegram app, which is generally the way people are viewing it is the Telegram founder is not offering a backdoor to Russia to be able to get all the data they want. So Russia's like, fine, screw you, and shuts it off. So the soldiers at the front went from everything working to now they don't have any internet connectivity, and one of their backup systems was Telegram. That went down as well. So there's like entire units that just aren't communicating right now, and they don't know how to get it back up.
That is crazy.
Shot in the foot.
Wow. And they didn't even create a back. We knew Russia was weak, but good Lord.
So, like, again, a comparison here. Let's say we would need, let's say everybody's operating on Signal, per se, our entire group. And there's organizations and even military units that operate pretty heavily on one platform. There are other platforms, but imagine that entire thing goes down. You've got to find all of the groups, find all of those numbers, add them all, make sure they're like, it's a bit of a process to get that whole thing stood back up. But this time, you're going on a less secure format to do it. So you can't share as much information. It's been a wild week for Russian decisions.
Is it normal for, like, when you're in a war zone, is it normal to use messaging apps? Wouldn't you just use
No.
your walkie-talkie or your war phone?
Well, so when it comes to Starlink, the range is significant. It's satellite internet, so the range is significant. Walkie-talkies, even handheld radios, are going to have relatively limited range. A lot of them also are jammed based off the electronic warfare, so there's some limitations there. Range and security are a big one. It's really hard to get long-range communications that are also secure and can't be hacked into by enemy forces. So the best solution that most of the Russian military had come to was, again, they're two different systems. Telegram is a messaging app, whereas Starlink is satellite internet. But those are two of the most secure, most reliable that Russia was using. No, a military should not be heavily reliant on commercial satellite technology and a publicly available messaging app. No. Ukraine has their own, it's called Delta. It's a battle tracking system that formalizes this a bit more in a secure environment. In the U.S., we do use Signal. I know it. I don't know that we use it to coordinate sensitive activities at the front. Maybe some do. Those messages weren't classified in the Houthi PC group chat, but I do know in the military we'll use Signal from time to time. I've seen it used a lot for unclassified, non-secure admin type issues. It's just ease of use to a degree. And but yeah, anyways, Russia, kind of the 1-2 punch, really shot themselves in the foot. And it looks like Ukraine's taking advantage of this, just kicked off a relatively small scale counterattack in the south while the Russian forces are trying to figure out, like, we can't talk to anybody. What are we doing here?
They're going to have to get a guy on horseback out there to start relaying messages.
Pigeons, yeah.
Yeah, whatever Napoleon was doing, they're going to have to figure that one out. Good Lord. So
it's been great, yeah.
How long do you think the communication blackout lasts?
Well, so it's not an entire blackout. It's just the infrastructure took a pretty big hit. So the attacks still continued along the front because it's not really important for the individual infantrymen moving forward in a suicide mission trying to move across no man's land. Like, Starlink didn't affect him. It's up the chain a little bit. I mean, starting at the company level, but getting supplies, saying, sending reports back. How did that attack go? Or did it not work? Coordinating with other units. That type of stuff has been pretty severely hampered. We're getting fewer reports out of Russia right now. Mm-hmm. Now, that might be because it looks like Ukraine has had some success in the south, and generally Russia tends to sit on that for quite a while rather than jump to announce it. But immediately, Russia's immediately putting into use backup systems. It's just a matter of, to help visualize this. Let's say their communications infrastructure went from 100% down to 10% for all of this. So it never went to zero, and that's probably an exaggeration to drop it to 10. But they immediately started building back up. So day by day, they went to 11, to 13, to 15, to 17. So they're getting back there, but they don't have anything that is as effective as Starlink. So there's some Russians right now that are saying they're going to have to revert to 2 years ago in terms of what they were using to communicate. And again, think of that for even you and I right now. If you said all of the technology, everything you use 2 years back, it's a pretty big setback. So it'll slow them down. This is not like a war-ending, war-winning type deal, but it's, again, Russia really shot themselves in the foot a couple times here. It was interesting to see. And then a lot of the Russian leadership saying this is not going to affect the troops at the front, and the troops at the front going, "Are you high? Like, what are you talking about?"
Dear
bit
Lord.
of a disconnect.
Dear, it couldn't happen to a better country. You just hate to see it, and it's just breaks your heart. I hope Ukraine pushes further. I hope they get something out of this at least. So,
well, they got $6,000 and shut down all those Russian Starlinks. So nothing else.
The
like
phishing attack, a whole lot
worked.
of money. $6,000. I feel like they could have asked for more.
Yeah, I don't know. The soldiers, not like the Russian soldiers at the front, have a lot of money to give at baseline.
Oh, okay, that's a good point.
It's one thing, but let me hear about Munich. Munich Security Conference. I'm seeing the clips come out. I'm focused today on digging into it a little bit, but was this the one last year where JD Vance went and yelled at everybody about free speech?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. He's not there this year, is he?
No, he's not. No,
Okay.
he's not allowed anymore. I mean, I think he's allowed, but if I were the Trump administration, I wouldn't let him anywhere near Europe. But yeah, this is in Munich, Germany, not Berlin. So don't get confused. But so Rubio spoke on behalf of the United States. He was the U.S. government's representative, and he struck a nicer tone. He said the U.S. wants to build with Europe and revitalize an old friendship, but he did not mention Ukraine or democracy or U.S. business deals with Russia or the administration's plans to support the European far right. He also talked about civilization again, like J.D. Vance did, which is, I continue to think is weird. Everybody who came here from Europe was more or less an outcast, right? Like, oh, you could say we're from the same, like, civilization, I guess, but, like, not really. Like, not all Americans are of European descent, and also, like, we're, like, literally a rejection of Europe. Like, the United States is, at its core, in our founding documents, a rejection of Europe. So whatever. But they keep talking about that, which I think is kind of code for white people, which important to note, Marco Rubio is not a white person. So I don't know why he continues to parrot that. But his speech was met with optimistic skepticism, and Eastern Europeans liked it. AOC was also at Munich. And so, yeah, she accused Donald Trump there of tearing apart the transatlantic alliance with Europe and seeking to introduce an age of authoritarianism. And she said that Trump is looking to withdraw the United States from the entire world so he can turn the United States into an autocratic society, which fact check, maybe true. Also, Democrats are at Munich. A lot of U.S. senators and a lot of U.S. governors are also at Munich. Gavin Newsom, obviously.
Governors?
Oh, okay. Governor, yeah, Gavin Newsom. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, as well as AOC, Gallego, and they are urging Europe to stand up to Trump. And it seems like there's an alliance forming, kind of, that's transcending borders on the basis of, like, capital L liberalism, like, not like liberalism in the American politics sense, but like free speech and free trade and democracy and human rights and all that. And so their presence there, U.S. allies have told Politico that it has made them relieved, but they're still skeptical that the U.S. can bounce back. And that is what we have for the U.S. Now, I have notes on here on what the other European leaders said, and it is not great for us. So Friedrich Merz, or not Merz, Merz, says the U.S. has reached its limits of power and has lost its role as a global leader and is no longer powerful to go at it alone. And so in that framework, the leader of Germany then called for the U.S. and Europe to fix the transatlantic alliance and noted that neither the U.S. or Europe can defeat China on its own. And then he also appeared to be announcing that Germany would soon be hosting French nuclear weapons, which was like, whoa. And then on that note, Macron is expected to be giving a big speech about French nuclear doctrine and the French nuclear umbrella. And his aides are pushing to keep up the momentum. They want Europe to cut the dependence on the U.S. Of course, France stands to benefit the most from cutting dependence on the United States. But importantly, though, France does not want to sever the alliance with the United States, but they just want to keep them more at arm's length, you know? Rather than be like this is like Germany prefers. Zelensky was also there. He quoted Kamala Harris in his speech, which was interesting.
That should go over well.
He said, Kamala Harris, I remember, said this, but with Russia, you cannot leave a single loophole Russians can use to start a war. So we'll see how that goes. But he also met with the U.S. delegation, which was Senator Roger Wicker out of Mississippi, friend of the pod, actually. This is the old guy who said, they asked him about Vladimir Putin. He said he should be hanging or something like that. He said,
okay,
you know, he's kind of like, I like him, but he's kind of just a mean old bastard. You hear this guy and you go, all right, this is the guy. Also, Jean Shaheen out of New Hampshire, I believe, Mark Kelly out of Arizona, and Lindsey Graham out of South Carolina. And they met with Zelensky about tomahawks, and the U.S. Senate said they are going to push for it. Now, Keir Starmer was also there. And he spent a lot of time attacking Nigel Farage, who's the head of the Reform Party. And
Mhm.
he said that he is pro-Putin and he is anti-NATO and he'll kill the coalition of the willing. Uh, he also said the UK seeks a reset of Brussels and wants a deeper economic integration with the EU, which is, in some ways could be called rejoining the EU. But we'll see.
Reverse Brexit.
Yeah, I don't know why they don't re. I know the reason they won't re-enter is because they're going to have to give up all these concessions. And if you look at their first EU deal, they had all these special rules and advantages that only benefited them. And so if they're going to re-enter, they're just going to be another nation among nations, right? They're not going to have their special little status. So he also wants a stronger, more united Europe, but he doesn't want the U.S. to step out. And he says the UK must be ready to fight Russia. Now we have von der Leyen. I'm not even saying her name right.
Ursula von der Leyen.
Wow, you said it so beautifully. If only if only I could pronounce words. So she scolded Mark Rutte over his "keep dreaming" remark. If you remember, when he was asked about Macron's statements about Europe defending itself without the United States, he said, "Keep dreaming." And so she said, "I would like to tell him, my dear friend, there is not only status quo goes on or division and disruption, there is a lot in between. And a status quo is not satisfactory for either Europe or the U.S." I will say there's something going on with these Europeans where they keep saying, "My dear friend, my dear Donald." I don't know what that's about, but that's weird.
For you? All right.
It's not formal. I don't know. It's just bizarre.
But personal, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
personal.
She was pleased. She said she was pleased by Rubio's speech. She wants to beef up the EU's mutual defense treaty, and then also she wants to reform how the EU works. So instead of needing unanimity. I'm
You got that one.
Yeah, I should have the Ben vernacular dictionary, and it is just the way I say words wrong. Anyways, instead of needing everyone to agree, they are now want to use a qualified majority. So it requires 55% of EU countries representing 65% of the bloc's population to vote in order to pass a proposal. And the reason for this is that it's a way of getting around Hungary's veto, because nasty Viktor Orban, not a friend of the show, enemy of the show, is blocking any and all progress there. And then lastly, we have China, who is there, and they say they want the rules-based international order back with the same rules, but they're in charge, which is, I think every nation would want that deal, right? We had it made for us. You get these rules left. Everybody follows the rules, and you get to pick what the rules are, and you also get to ignore them. You
get to pick which ones you follow.
Yeah, like that is
great.
Yeah, of course they want to be in charge of the international order. Everybody does. That's why it was so dumb we destroyed it. But anyways, Foreign Minister Wang Yi beseeched audience members to revitalize the UN system, because otherwise the world will revert to the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak. So that was in his speech. And then afterwards, he said, this is the irony is it's not lost on them. He said, trying to split Taiwan from China would create a war between the U.S. and China. So, of course, they don't want a world where the law of the jungle, where the strong prey on the weak. Yet any idea that they're not allowed to invade Taiwan would be, war. So, of course, they're already kind of acting like the United States in some aspects there, where you pick which rules you like and which one's hypocrisy and which one isn't. Now, I'm not trying to hate on us. I'm just saying that, this is same shit we do. And so, they're already kind of acting like the head of the rules-based international order. But so that was Munich, at least today, Saturday. Tomorrow, it is still going on. And I believe it is still going on as we speak. But the U.S. part is over. I'm sure we'll get something out of Gavin Newsom on Sunday or late today. But as of right now, that is what we have. What are your reactions?
Going way back to the beginning, I don't like governors going to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, representatives and senators, if it applies to their role in Congress, sure. But, and I don't know if everybody you listed is on a foreign relations committee or, an appropriate committee where it or in leadership where it would actually make sense. But it seems silly. And I know the reason that the two you mentioned are possible presidential candidates. Fine. Still I don't know. I just don't like it. It doesn't feel like it's the right place for governors. Focus on your state, right? or focus on your district. We see this a lot. I mean, there's always a lot of outcry around people that go visit, like mayors that go to visit Israel. And I'm in the same camp. Like, what are you doing? Like, there's so much stuff for you to do and that you're responsible for in your area. I don't think that's ridiculous. Probably just looking for time on camera. But overall, I mean, nothing new here, right? It seems a little softer tone than Munich last year, but by and large, you've got kind of a split in Europe. Some wanting more of a hard break, some wanting, kind of hoping that this can still be mended, or maybe that it's a short-term disagreement. Mm-hmm. This isn't the focus of what you were talking about, but you mentioned that Rubio didn't mention Russia or Ukraine in his speech. I want to say, like, so new stats just came out, and I'll pull them up. We can share them if you want, but some new stats on aid to Ukraine in 2025. And it feels more and more, it feels like this is something that is going to be a mark of shame on the United States. This is a major war happening right now. More Russians died last month than at any month in the war since like the very beginning, like maybe ever. It was north of, I want to say 35,000 killed and seriously wounded. This is a major war with an adversary. I don't need to preach this, right, to our audience here, but we are a no-show in that conflict right now. And Rubio getting up on stage in the European Defense Conference for the year and not even mentioning that feels neglectful, to say the least. Like, I the World War II comparisons are, we do them too much. I do them too much. I get it. But I can't help but think, like, what if the United States stood up in 1940, 1939? We pick your time and went to Europe to give this big speech about national security and like failed to mention the Germans advancing across France. It's just like people would look at it and be like, what? How are you missing this thing? I'm not expecting Rubio to come out with some like groundbreaking new strategy or something, but more and more we're just looking away. Like it's not even there. And of course, I have and continue to advocate that we should be more involved. I think we should be sending a lot more equipment. I think we should be doing a lot more to assist Ukraine because I think that is the fastest path to peace and the best alignment with U.S. national security interests, short and long term. But even that side, to just ignore it entirely feels like it has to be one of the top three biggest issues. And when you're in Europe, know the audience, know who you're talking to. It is their number one issue. And instead, we're talking about like the failure of civilization. What? White person food? Did that come up? So looking at this new report from the Kiel Institute that's done a pretty good job, I think, of tracking support to Ukraine over the course of the last couple of years, it changed drastically in 2025, which shouldn't be a shock. We saw this coming, but when you see it graphically represented, it kind of drives the point home. The United States effectively did not contribute anything at all. Europe picked up. The United States went down to around 500 million total, but that was the bleed over from a package that was allocated in 2024 under the prior administration, I believe. So It wasn't a new one. It was the last delivery from that. So we not only shut off military aid, that was the only military package. We shut off all humanitarian aid. Gone. Zero. What? Now, I know there were so many arguments about like, let's stop that and take care of our homeless. Yeah.
Well, we're the homeless, still homeless.
And I don't know, this is the cynic in me. And I got it, like money is not infinite. And unless you're the US government, you just print more and then it actually is infinite. But like, it's not like that gets reallocated and all of a sudden Tennessee has better roads, right? We have just walked away from this. And I think in turn, we got like a more robust ICE. They got new optics for their rifles and some new armored vehicles to drive through Minneapolis.
Yes,
that was the trade-off.
Random people, yeah.
But when you look at the top 20 military donors in terms of share of GDP, the United States isn't even on the list. Yeah. We didn't make the top 20, Ben. It feels embarrassing. Like, are you kidding me? Like, we're watching Spain gave more as a percentage of their GDP to the Ukrainian war effort. It's just this, like, we put blinders on, and we're just assuming that it doesn't matter at all. And we're doing nothing to affect the end of this war. And folks will take issue with that. I will die on that hill. We're doing nothing. Trump yesterday said that Zelensky needs to come around because Russia wants to make a deal. Less than 24 hours later, Rubio says we don't know if Russia actually wants peace. Yeah. We're doing nothing. And it is a major conflict that we have the ability to influence, and we are choosing to just sit on the sidelines. I think this is going to be a mark on the United States in the future, more than like the Afghanistan withdrawal. I think that's something people looked past pretty quick, and it was hard to measure exactly what came out of that. This is one that it's embarrassing.
On the World War II comparison, it is quite... I don't know if it says a lot about FDR as a leader, or if it says a lot about Donald Trump and his weakness as a leader. But like as early as 1938, FDR is already on these, he had the nightly radio thing or the weekly fireside chat, right? He's already like mentally preparing the American public. He's already getting them to the point of, you need to be ready for war. And also we're going to be giving aid, right? And he's leading them the whole way there. And he goes up against these isolationists in almost, I think, 3 of the 4 elections that he won. And he beats the bricks off of them. And so we're kind of living in the alternate reality where the isolationists won, right? In World War II. I mean, it's unspeakable. It is going to be a black mark on us. It hurts our argument that Europe needs to assist us in our conflict, our future conflict with China, right? Because they're going to go, well, that's funny, but I remember when you were useless when it came to Ukraine. It is ridiculous, and it all comes from an 81-year-old man's 5-year-old understanding of what peace is.
I guess part of my frustration here is there's been this push of Europe needs to do more. And more than a year ago, we'd reached the point where Europe had contributed more than the United States. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a never-ending comparison because people will inevitably say then it needs to be more than just more. It needs to be 2x or 3x, right? Whatever it is. But I find it hard to believe that Spain has more military capability to help fend off one of our direct adversaries than we do. We found this ridiculous middle ground where we can't do too much here because Russia is such a threat. But so we can't get very involved at all, but it's not so much a threat to where we can just ignore it. And like whatever happens out of this, happens out of this. And I don't know how we square those two things. But that seems to be where our policy is right now. Russia is such a major threat, we can't dare get involved by even sending more military equipment. But it is not enough of a threat to worry about what happens if we sit this one out.
Yep. I fully agree with you, but I honestly think you are being a little bit of a hater because I do think if Steve Witkoff is given 19 more tries, he will somehow create a peace deal out of this.
Perfect segue into Witkoff's other masterpiece here, the Iranian nuclear deal. Yes. And I just want to say, I don't care how Witkoff could be the smartest person in the world. I think he has not done a great job in the areas he's been involved.
Really? Wow.
But,
that's
yep.
kind of
But even if you think he's the best man for the job, he is not the best man for all of these jobs. There's no way. And we are putting ourselves at a disadvantage by having one person, or two now, him and Kushner, try to settle some of the largest geopolitical issues of our lifetime. It is ridiculous that they are trying to end the largest land war in Europe since World War II and negotiate an Iranian nuclear deal at the same time. That's absurd. That's ridiculous. And the fact that we don't have a bigger team working on that is maybe the reason that both of these things are still ongoing. Iran, we just sent another carrier strike group from the Caribbean. So you remember back in June when we pulled the Gerald R. Ford from the Middle East to the Caribbean, start kind of support the counter narcotics and all of that stuff in Southcom.
Yes, sir.
They're going back. They should be in the Middle East in the next week or so. So the buildup there is continuing. Negotiations have not gone anywhere. Negotiations have essentially been, let's agree to keep talking, which is, Iran loves this. That's what they do, is they just drag their feet and wait us out. And yeah, more military firepower moving into the region with leaks. And I'm going to say this, I don't know if you should put any weight to this or not. Leaks that one of the considerations is a weeks or even months long sustained military campaign against Iran. That would suggest a goal more akin to regime change, the collapse of the regime, than just punishing them and trying to get them to the table. But I don't know. Again, I don't know how much how much faith we should put in that leak at all. But more and more heading over.
I just don't really get what I saw. Trump said, well, we're negotiating if the negotiations don't work. But then he says about the nuclear program, and then he says about the protesters again. I was like, he doesn't even know. They're just like, is this like the compromise to stop us from bombing like Greenland? Is that they're just going to put everything near Iran so it takes forever?
They had the bombs ready. They had the bombs ready, and they were like, you can't put a pin back in a grenade, right? Once you pull that out, and they're like, you pulled the pin. We got to use these somewhere. Come up with a target.
If you're Marco Rubio, you're like, all right, well, I would love for it to be Cuba, but we can't burn Cuba yet, and we can't use Mexico yet, because once those are out, then he's going to want Greenland again. So
send him back to the Middle East. Yeah.
Back to Iran. Oh my Lord, dude.
Those bombs have an expiration date, man.
Dear Christ. Well, would you like
we'll see. I don't know where that, again, it does. A positive note. Let's do that, because I think you're getting ready to move into questions, and it's a great transition. But I want to end us on a positive note today.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We smuggled in, according to the Wall Street Journal, 6,000 Starlink terminals to help the protesters in Iran.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. We're I guess not very effective, but still, that is something.
Yeah. Right. I feel like we got very, very little information out. But there were still calls happening. You would still get reports from people on the ground. So maybe that was the bridge that allowed it to happen. I wonder, one thing I know is that it's hard to set up a Starlink. Like, if internet and phones are all completely down and you get a Starlink, I don't know if you can activate it. If that makes sense. I think you need Wi-Fi or a cell network to activate it. So if you, for the very first time, turn it on without any of that, I'm not sure if you can get it going. But I'm sure there's a workaround to it. But either way, I kind of love that. I don't think it's any secret that I wish and hope that we do more to help the Iranian people and get rid of that brutal regime however we can. I think there's a lot of things we can do in that regard. But I've been pretty critical, saying, why are we not doing anything? And it looks like we did do something. And I feel like there should be pretty wide acceptance of that being a good option. And I'm 100% on board. If there is any country around the world that is locking down its people, not letting them get the word out about how they're being massacred by their own government, send them some Starlinks. Love that. I think it's a good tool to have in the toolkit. Wish we would do more. Wish we had done more. Maybe more news will come out. But I didn't want to, again, little positive note there, Ben.
It is very positive. I'm glad we did it. So we do have questions here, though. So this one comes from a member. This is from Jake the Snake. Dude, this guy's always slithering on into these questions. He said, if non-nuclear Western countries decide to develop nuclear weapons and the capability to deliver them far from the borders, what do you think the United States and the other nuclear powers' response will be? Condemnation, sanctions, or even military intervention?
You take this one. Lead us off.
Oh, goodness. I have no idea. Because the U.S.'s tool for this has always just been, we'll put nuclear weapons in your country. Right? And it's kind of like always been like, well, you don't want to deal with the sanctions regime. You don't want to rock the boat because you could lose your military bases or whatever. But if like it's like Japan or Poland, uh, I don't know. I like there's a part of me that's like in in a 2024 framework, I would say that our response would be to kind of get them to just do nuclear sharing with us, and we'll add them to the nuclear umbrella, right? I don't know what it looks like in the modern framework. There's a part of me that thinks Trump just doesn't care, but also I don't. I genuinely have no idea.
I think you'd probably see other countries step in with some sort of sharing agreement. Like, if the concern right now is that the United States is not a reliable backstop, then I could see nuclear states in Europe maybe trying to open that up. I talked to somebody recently about the possibility of a EU focused security guarantee, and there's a lot that goes into that, and there's no guarantee it would even be successful, but there's no reason you couldn't do something like that, I don't think, right? Like, it's not, the United States is not the only country with a nuclear arsenal. Couldn't the UK offer to extend some coverage, maybe forward deploy in certain areas?
I don't know, but this one comes from
Testy.
This comes from Locked Sarah Lightson. I don't know. These Europeans, dude. So it says, is Trump spilling military secrets when he rants about things like the discombobulator, or is he so confused that it doesn't matter because it's impossible to tell what he's actually on about? Female listener from the Principality of the Fürstendom of Liechtenstein. You guys do have a diverse demographic. See, I was right. It was a European.
Liechtenstein, right?
So Sarah Lichtenstein, maybe is how you say it. Who's to say? Nobody knows. But anyways, what do you think, Preston?
I think it's the second. I think he says so much stuff that it's hard to. I mean, didn't he talk about like gold-plated battleships, which pretty clearly, like, that's not going to be. we like pretty sure that's not going to be a thing. I do think it's a risk for what it's worth. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if somebody could dig into that. Maybe we could have AI do that at some point. Kind of you're a Claude master, Ben. There's no way, with how much Trump talks and how he just randomly says stuff, he has to have, at this point, said stuff that was classified. And immediately after, people were like, oh, shit. And had to kind of cover for that.
So
that has to be happening.
The discombobulator.
He just says too much stuff off the cuff. Like, walking down the steps, somebody will say something, and he'll, like, rattle off nuclear codes, right? So, like, it has to have happened.
I do agree. The discombobulator to me just seems like he's just talking about like jamming, but they couldn't figure out how to do it, so they just said, "Well, discombobulate them." I just it's whatever. All right, so it's the other ones from another member. The past two are from members. This is also a member. It's from Nickel72. With our ever-increasing hostile, not-so-friendly stances towards Canada and their subsequent decision to review F-35 purchases, while now evaluating the KIA KF-21 Borame and the SAB JS-39 Gripen, as well as NATO countries' decision to try and turn away from key American arms and invest more into their continent's military-industrial complex, do you worry that U.S. procurement becoming even more slow and or expensive? Is there any way you see this trend reversing, or are we dooming yet another one of our greatest soft power advantages as an advanced weapons supplier?
Yeah. So first off, it makes sense. I mean, it's funny because we actively talk about this, like onshoring defense manufacturing, so we're not in a bind if we need more heavy metals, let's say, or heavy, what is it? Rare earth minerals. Rare earth minerals. Yeah, there you go. So we want all of that stuff here, so we don't have to worry about importing it in the time of war. But at the same time, so much of our defense industrial base is focused on keeping our allies around the world tied to U.S. defense manufacturing. So we're not really practicing what we preach there. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, again, it's all to our benefit, so I get it. It makes a lot of sense for countries around the world to be looking at their own alternatives. It does. I don't. The benefit we have right now is that it takes a long time. I mean, even if somebody places an order for F-35s today, like, what's the delivery timeline? I mean, it's years down the road, right? So it's not a quick turnover. These are pretty sticky products in a lot of ways. So even if so there's a lot of time to right the ship, if you will. I mean, especially Canada, US right now, not looking great in a lot of ways. But, in the time that it would take my understanding is they didn't cancel the F-35. It's just something they're considering. I could be wrong there, but the process that it would take to look at something new, run through the legal process of getting out of that contract, maybe we're back on better terms. But big picture, it's a really interesting question because we are actively trying to onshore everything possible while also maintaining. I mean, it turns out these alliances are good for more reason than one, right?
Without a doubt. And so we have our one last question, which is, how tall is Preston? I have been avoiding this question. I personally, Ben Wheeler, have been avoiding this question for, I think I've seen it 4 or 5 weeks now, or at least 3 weeks.
Are you protecting me?
Well,
do you think you're protecting me, or what's the?
Do you want to answer? Do you want to share how tall you are? I don't.
5'10".
5'10". I would say 6'2".
Okay. Definitely not 6'2". I don't have boots with heels that high.
Are you dead ass actually 5'10"?
Yeah, I don't know. You think that's too much or too little?
Well, I'm 5'8", and I think we're the same height.
I mean, I could be shrinking.
Oh, I don't know.
The last time I had to do like a height weight in the Army was a little over a year ago, and it was 5'10".
Really? Interesting. Maybe I should get the Army to measure me.
That's been for as long as I can remember, it's been between 5'9" and 5'10", depending on the scale. I've never touched the 5'11", and I don't think I've hit 5'8", but now I'm getting kind of concerned that I might be downsizing. But
I don't know. Maybe we aren't the same height. Hell if I know. We'll do one more though. So they would like.
I'll tell you what. I'll do a scientific confirmation of that after the episode.
Oh, I'm not upset. I don't. You can say how tall.
Well,
you
now
are.
I need to know.
All right. So this last one is from Evil. One day someone's gonna make a master cut of all the words I mispronounce, the names I can't pronounce. Anyways, I would like to hear your thoughts on the El Paso Airspace closing event.
Dude, what a mess.
Dude,
this is one where there's no good answer. So for anybody that managed to not have their phones on for about an hour and a half, you would have missed this.
Yeah.
Lucky you. A few nights ago, in the middle of the night, airspace over El Paso was shut down to everything, including medevac flights. There were a couple areas also kind of near the White Sands missile range, I believe, and it was up to 18,000 feet. So like pretty well shut off everything. And El Paso and Fort Bliss, I believe, was included. And there's a military airfield there. And nobody had any answers. We haven't had an airspace shutdown like that. It was 10 days long.
Yeah.
We haven't had an airspace shutdown like that since 9/11. So people are like, this is weird. And there was no notice. Fort Bliss was freaking out. They were like, we have no idea what's happening here. Now looking back, we know that multiple U.S. government agencies had no idea what was going on. The DOD, like Northcom, was like, what is this? We didn't know about this. So there was speculation that there was going to be two things. Military operations into Mexico, which it'd be weird to like just shut off airspace over El Paso to do that. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, like so much for any sort of element of surprise when you're announcing a disruptive airspace closure like that. The other was the possibility that maybe we were staging equipment out of El Paso, out of Fort Bliss, to fly somewhere around the world. But, we would have seen those flights. Didn't matter. Pretty quickly. First we had government officials defending it. We had people on camera being like, it was a cartel drone. And we defended the skies against this cartel drone. But people immediately were like, well, that doesn't make sense because every day there are cartel drones flying across the border. Like, we know this. They're regularly intercepted. Why would the airspace be shut down for 10 days for something that happens every day?
Right.
Then a question was raised. If a drone was shot down at like 6 a.m., why did we shut down the airspace 3 hours early before it was there and then leave it closed for 10 days. So like that didn't make sense. The most recent one I've seen is that there is some sort of directed energy weapon that the DoD loaned to Customs and Border Patrol, and they used it to intercept what they thought was a drone in the El Paso airspace, but it turned out to be a small party balloon.
Oh. Wow. So
I don't know what to say about any of the things that I just said.
That's interesting. Did they just like get bored of using it in Minneapolis, so they brought it to the border to a bunch of guys who never used it before?
Like, what is DoD doing giving experimental weaponry to Border Patrol? That sounds like of any organization right now, we're giving Border Patrol lasers. We sure about that?
This can't be normal. Up until this administration, I have never heard of the military lending and helping domestic agencies as much as they are. Like, there's no way this is common, right?
I just like, what do you go with in this story, right? Like the one that's coming out is like just incompetence.
Yeah.
They're like, what are we doing? Handing over laser weapons that are super secret that then Border Patrol is apparently firing over populated cities without notifying FAA, which seems like that was the issue. FAA is like, what are we doing here, guys? If you're not going to tell us when these lasers are flying through our airspace, we got to shut it down. And it was so drastic a step that they shut it down for 10 days. And in the meantime, they got a balloon. Like, there's so much here. But anyways, I don't know. That's kind of where it sits right now. I don't even know what to...
When they write the history of this time, the chapter's just going to be called Dumbassery. And it's just going to be this entire administration. But like, comment, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Spotify and Apple, become a member to become a member, and have a happy Valentine's Day. And we will see you next week.
Adios.